Hola, chicas. Welcome to our Para Mi YouTube series, You Can Do Anything. Today, I'm so excited to be having a guest with us today, Cynthia Fails, author, publisher, what else?
A whole lot of other ers.
A whole lot of other ers. So let's start off with just getting to know Cynthia. What do you do?
I do a lot of different things. I guess you could lump me into the form of a creator. You mentioned I'm an author. I'm also an illustrator. I'm also a podcaster, but I'm also a publisher as well. All the ers. I do all the ers.
I didn't realize you were a publisher or an illustrator.
I am, yeah.
Wow, I'll have to check out your work sometime. Well, we are starting these series because we want to bring value to you. We want to bring conversations that you care about, that we care about. And today we're talking about imposter syndrome. This has really sort of become a buzzword in our world. And I wanted to make sure that we took a moment to really talk about it. How does it impact women? How does it particularly impact women of color? And so, Cynthia, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. I'm honored. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. So let's start off with first, what is imposter syndrome in your own words?
Imposter syndrome to me is just this consistent belief that you are fooling everybody around you, that somehow they're going to find out that you're not as good as you present yourself to be or as they think you are.
Do you think that this particularly impacts or differently impacts women of color? Why do I keep hearing like we go through imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so it impacts women more than it impacts men, but then when you get into communities of color, it also impacts us more than other women as well. In America, I'll say that. Let's start with that, right?
Yep.
In America, there is a thing that we do to ourselves where we tell ourselves that you have to be 10 times better just to get your foot in the door. And what we're doing is consistently putting pressure on whomever we're telling that to, right? To perform at a certain level, to perform with perfection, which is really unattainable. And we're setting ourselves up for imposter syndrome without realizing that we're doing it. Because if you're always striving to be this better version, this best version, this perfect version of whatever this standard is that's invisible that we've created,
right,
you're never going to reach it. And you're always going to feel like, well, they've met the standard, and I haven't. And they're going to figure out that I haven't met that standard, even though the standard doesn't exist.
Yes. Yeah. So I was reading in one of the books, is Brown Girls. Oh my gosh, I'm going to mess up this title. But we'll get to it. I'll share the title later in the comments. But in this book I was reading, it was saying how, as people of color or as women of color, when we are in places of success, many times imposter syndrome can kick in because we're the only people that look like us in that environment, Absolutely. Right? And you're talking about how these outside or exterior forces kind of make this. So how about those places and spaces where imposter syndrome impacts you because you are the only person of color? Like, I don't know if you've ever been in that space personally, but if you did, how did you one, become aware you were even going through this thing?
So it's funny. When I was in school, I was experiencing it. When I was in school, we didn't have the term imposter syndrome, so I had no idea what was happening, right? But I had the good fortune of having a mother who was aware of some of these things and how they could happen. So I actually had the opportunity to talk to her, and she was like, well, who do you think you are? How do you see yourself? And so she got me thinking more internally about what my skills were, what my talents were, so that I could remember who I was, right? So that I could start to believe in myself again, so that I could understand that where I was in that moment is exactly where I needed to be. And that nobody could take away from any of my skills or anything that I brought to the table. And that was the place where I started to battle it. It's something that I still battle regularly, but then I return back to the same questions that my mom asked me, right? Who are you? What are your talents? What are your skills? And you're right where you need to be.
Yeah.
You deserve
So my next question to you is, you said that you go through imposter syndrome from time to time, even now. So what is it that you hear or what is it that happens in your mind that dang it, I'm going through this again? Like, what are those like side effects maybe or telltale signs that we might be going through imposter syndrome?
It's like this undertone of self-talk that just kicks in every now and then. And it's like, who are you to dream this big? Who are you to think that you can change a big industry like the publishing industry, right?
Yeah.
Which is exactly why I got into the publishing game to begin with. And I have to remember, who am I not to try?
Yeah,
right?
I do go through it from time to time, but I went through it a few years ago, 6 weeks before I graduated college. And I remember thinking what you just said. Well, who am I? What am I thinking? I don't deserve this. Who do I think I am to be in a place and space like this?
Yeah.
And it got so bad that I talked to my mom and I said, Mom, I think I'm going to drop out. And she goes, Are you crazy?
Yeah.
You're 6 weeks away from graduating.
Oh my gosh.
But it was this very like, just almost like an internalized belief that I just wasn't gonna cut it, like that I wasn't gonna make it past the stage. And what was I thinking? Although I had 4 years of school in the background,
Yeah.
right? I was 6 weeks to be done, and that was the first time I think that I realized how big it really was, and that it was imposter syndrome. I'm sure I went through it before, but that's the part of my life that really sticks out because I remember thinking, I am crazy. I'm trying to quit 6 weeks before I'm done. What am I? But it was this conversation, like you said, this internalized conversation that I just couldn't move past.
Yeah.
And so I think the layer here of similar things between our story and my story and yours is that you said you went to your mother. I went to my mother too.
Shout out to moms.
Yeah, shout out to moms. So that takes me to the next question of, as peers, maybe seeing our girlfriends or our best friends or our sisters or our daughters going through imposter syndrome, what do you think it is that we can do for one another?
Hold up the mirror.
Oh man.
Yeah. That's powerful. That's a big one. It's hard for you to see, it's impossible for you to see how others see you. Yeah. And sometimes we can be the hardest on ourselves. So if you see someone going through that, hold up the mirror for them. Tell them what you see in them.
You're saying hold up the mirror, remind them who they are. How could we do that? How can we do that without being like overbearing, right? Because I feel like when you are going through imposter syndrome, like you don't want anybody to tell you anything. You're so fragile. You feel so vulnerable. So what's a good way to hold up the mirror to a dear friend?
Yeah, you don't want people to know that you're experiencing this. That's all part of imposter syndrome. But a good way that my friends do it is just by shooting me a random text or a random meme, right? That says, hey, I see you. You're amazing. Just something like that can reset somebody's mind. Taking them out to lunch, taking them out for coffee. Those are good ways that you can just check in with people, see how they're doing, and give them the chance to share how they're feeling. And from there, usually conversations will continue to grow and some of those things will come to the surface. And that's when you hold up that mirror.
Keep in mind what you're telling yourself. Keep in mind how we talk to ourselves. When we know we've gone through tough things in life and we know we've faced adversity, there's no reason to doubt our capabilities, but we do it anyway. It's internalized. So keep in mind what you're hearing yourself talk to say to yourself, but also what we see and hear from our peers, because I think that sometimes you're right, like we go through it and it's you feel alone, you feel like you can't tell anyone. So keeping tabs on friends. And I love what you said about memes, or just like any kind of silly reminder of like, you're amazing, you're great. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. So Cynthia, tell us, how do we find you? How do we find out about your business? Take a moment to share just what are you working on this year and how do people find you?
Ooh, goodness, what am I working on this year? That's a big question. It's going to take way too long. The easiest way to find me is probably on Instagram at CL Fails to find me and all of the stuff that I'm working on around the concept of joy. The easiest way to follow the publishing company is at Launch Crate on Instagram. How did I blank?
Okay. Yeah. So many accounts to keep track of.
So many accounts to keep track of.
So Instagram. Right? Launch
Crate
on Instagram. Okay.
And CL Fails for the personal stuff, which is probably far more fun than the Launch Crate stuff. Big stuff coming for me this year. We're going to expand the Joy and Pain Tour some more. I have a couple of books that I'm working on. We've got some more books that we're releasing out into the world, all books that are meant to help people to grow in some way. We're creating ripples of change wherever we go with every book that we publish. So lots on the horizon.
Well, thank you for the work that you do for lifting others and to lift others. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for watching. Yay!
Thank you.